Hi everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Gallowgateshots podcast. Match reactions are back. I am your host this evening, Kris, alongside Scott and Iain. Iain, I'm going to come to you first of all, mate, because you have been at the match and it looks like you're still trying to get your body temperature back up, mate. You look absolutely freezing.
It is absolutely Baltic. Obviously, my mum's not got the heating on in the house because of energy crisis. But also she decided to, while we were on our way back from the match, go out and walk the dog and not leave a key for anyone. So we've just been stood in the snow, absolutely freezing my balls off. So I'm just starting to warm up now.
Perfect, mate. Well, let's hope it was all worth it. But we'll get on to your reactions in a little bit. Scott, all the way from Amsterdam, mate. What's the weather like over there? Is it as cold as it is in Britain at the minute?
It absolutely is, yeah. The canals have all frozen over. It's not thick enough for people to skate on yet, but it's getting there. So I'd imagine, well, I think we're going to get a heat wave next week. I'm turning to Michael Fish now, but it's cold. And these Castor hoodies are not warm at all. If you've got one of these scuba things, they're not like a proper hoodie. So there you go.
I think that conversation has been a debate throughout the Gallowgateshots YouTube channel for a long time now about that scuba hoodie and what sort of material it is, whether it's a waterproof material, whether it's a winter hoodie or it's just a lounge hoodie. But regular viewers will know this has all been covered on numerous occasions. So Newcastle got back to business today. They were the host of, is it Rayo Vallecano? That's what we're going to go with. Okay, that's the pronunciation that we're going to go with today.
I'm glad you attempted that and not me.
I've been practicing for the last 2 hours, mate. I'm going to stay with you, Scott. And the lineup today, were you surprised at that? Because it was a pretty strong starting 11.
It was. I was surprised to see Pope and Trippier. I think we discussed in the match preview for the Bournemouth game that we weren't even sure if they were going to feature in that match. So to see both of them play and both of them start, that was a shock. It was a very strong side. I mean, you would pick that side for a Premier League game and you wouldn't really have many complaints if you saw that come up. The bench was a bit of a shock. I must admit, I wasn't expecting there to be no senior players. I mean, I don't even think we can count Gillespie in as a senior player because I don't know if he made the squad. I can't remember now.
But Gillespie was definitely in the 25-man squad or whatever it was.
Oh, was he? Okay. So, I mean, one senior player, when you think you've got 4 goalkeepers and he's bottom of that pecking order as well. Surprising. But then I think Craig Hope on Twitter just before kickoff said, there was a game yesterday where the players that aren't on the bench and aren't featuring today were featured very heavily there. So it looks like Eddie Howe has done a kind of a 2-game over 2 days like they did towards the end of the summer pre-season and have 2 separate teams play. So I think players have had minutes. I wasn't expecting Bruno and Cher, and I don't think they would have played yesterday. I doubt it. So, yeah, strong side. Was expecting maybe it was a bit too much from them, but it was obviously first game back in cold weather, and it's all you could tell throughout some of that game.
Now that I've said that, you've got me doubting whether Gillespie is part of that squad as well, because
I can't remember.
We've got that would be the 4th goalkeeper in that squad. So
yeah,
I remember there was criticism last season, 2 seasons ago, when Bruce named 4 goalkeepers. So I can't even remember off the top of my head. This is how knowledgeable we are on this Gallowgateshots YouTube channel. I'll tell you that. Iain, was any surprise players missing from that squad today for you?
Yeah, so I was literally just about to get on the metro when sort of it was put in the group chat. But obviously I didn't realise that there was a game yesterday. So the likes of Almiron, Joe Linton, they were a surprise not to be in there. Again, even the likes of Lewis, because I know he featured in the friendly or the cup game or whatever it was against Al. Was it Al Halal? Al Halil. Richie. So I thought maybe they would have featured, but now knowing that there was potentially a game sort of yesterday kind of makes a little bit more sense. But similar to Scott, I didn't expect Pope or Trippier to feature at all. I kind of think it goes to potentially the testament of how professional they are, that they could have come back. And I think what it was reported is that they were going to get a little bit more time off than sort of people that have returned and they've come in and played a friendly when, quite frankly, they could have just sort of sat with their feet up. So testament to their professionalism, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to go straight into the game, and rather than covering the game bit by bit, we'll just go through general topics on that game and what's happened. So Nick Pope, despite him starting goal, didn't really have much to do in that game. It looked like the opposition were just there for a day out by the looks of it. They didn't really put much effort in, and I can't really. They had a chance early on, but other than that, there was nothing going forward, really. I'm saying going forward, there's nothing in the middle of the field either. Their defence was the busiest on the day. And were you shocked at that, Scott, at all? Would you think it would be more of a competition?
I thought there would be, and I'm not going to lie, I haven't seen them play week in, week out in La Liga, but apparently they're 8th in La Liga, they were saying on the commentary. So, I mean, you'd expect a game, you expect Spanish teams to keep the ball well and play, you know, maybe it's not tiki-taka football, but, you know, pass and move and you know, make it hard for you, get you a bit of legs. And I would imagine that Eddie Howe's come off the end of that game and be like, I'm so disappointed at the opposition not giving us the game that we needed to maybe get our fitness levels up. Because, like you said, I think the commentators were just like, who they haven't kept hold of the ball. They've given it away again and again. And it was just constant loose balls. And their goalkeeper as well couldn't seem to clear his lines past, 25 yards. So it was a surprise that we didn't get the game that maybe we wanted. I'm going to, I think, was it last week? Al Hilal gave us more of a game than this team did. So, yeah, I'd imagine Eddie Howe is a bit disappointed in the performance of the opposition for what you would want from, I don't want to say pre-season friendly, but that's the nuts and bolts of it. That's what it is. Yeah. So you want to maybe it's not be too competitive, but you don't want it to just be like a testimonial game or a, a soccer aid game where you're just passing the ball around and not really needing to try much.
You want to break a sweat in these sort of games, and you want to get some miles in the legs of the players, and it didn't really happen today, Iain. Yes, we had a lot of the ball, we controlled the game. A lot of nice sections of the game, to be fair, from Newcastle. We did play quite well in intervals of that one, but we played bad in some parts too. But once again, it seemed like a bit of a waste of time, in my opinion. Now, I'll probably imagine Eddie Howe looks at it as well. And the only thing that came from that game as a benefit is another couple of goals for confidence-wise and getting some minutes in the players. Yeah,
it didn't really have a feel of a competitive game. Like, sort of even going forward, like you say, there was spells where we sort of popped it round quite well. But for the most part, I thought it looked quite sort of lethargic. There was no real tempo to the game. Sort of players were getting on it and then slowing the game down, and then it was just sort of being passed around with no sort of like urgency to go forward. So yeah, little bit disappointing. I would have expected a more competitive game. The first couple of minutes, I think, was very, very scrappy. I think we gave the ball away quite cheaply. And I thought they pressed literally for that first 2 minutes and then they had a chance where Popes had to tip it over the bar and then they had a corner from it. But other than that, like you say, that they didn't look to sort of get at where and get forward. Possibly, if we touch on it a little bit later, the second half, they brought, I think, one of their wingers on. Genuinely couldn't tell you who it was because, for one, the PA system was very, very ropey in the ground as well. But he looked quite threatening with his pace. He got through, I think, once, might be an offside. But like you say, other than the first couple of minutes, they didn't really look to cause any bother at all.
Yeah, so Scott, Newcastle took the lead early on, 4th minute, I think it is, that Sean Longstaff grabs his goal. And Sean Longstaff, it's a great goal. It really is. It's a poor defensive header that just basically lands it back at Longstaff. Then it's an absolute lethal, absolute thunder bastard of a shot, to be fair. Hits the roof of the net and goes in. And overall, I thought Longstaff, he's picked up where he's left off. He played really well towards the last couple of games before the break came for the World Cup. And he seemed like he's well up for it again.
He does. It was a good passage of movement. Actually, I think Willock played a nice ball over to Trippier, who put the cross in. And as he said, they didn't deal with the cross at all. And if anything, I think the clearance header went behind the defender. I'm not quite sure how he did it. I think it either dropped to Murphy or Murphy was battling for it, and then Longstaff just on the edge of the box he puts his laces through it. And it's one of those ones where the keeper just couldn't react to it. It was too close, too fast. I did feel Longstaff had a few spells in the game where he was dropping off a bit. He was a few wayward passes here and there, but on the whole, yeah, he had a really good game. It's nice to see because he's come under a lot of criticism, I think, since his injury a couple of seasons ago, that he's never quite got back up to the level that we were expecting where he was before the injury. So it's good to see him getting back up to those levels, and hopefully he can move on and progress higher and perform a bit better for him.
Yeah, and before we went on it, Aaron started recording this one. You mentioned, Iain, that your perspective of the game and certain players were a little bit different to what me and Scott saw watching it on NUFC TV. And we'll pick up from that conversation now. So you mentioned Willock and said that from your point of view and where you were in the ground, that it seemed that he was arguably, let's say, not interested.
Yeah.
Use of a better phrase.
That's the way it came, because obviously I don't just watch the player that's on the ball. Don't get us wrong, he did have good spells. The second half, he played an absolute blinder of a pass out to Jacob Murphy, I think. But for the majority of the first half, and again, I think it wasn't just him that was given possession away cheaply, but it just looked like off the ball, he was just sort of like sauntering around the field. Again, that's just my opinion from literally one angle of a ground. When you watch it on telly, it is completely different. So, and obviously you alluded to the fact that he was getting frustrated with he was making good runs and players were losing the ball, they weren't playing him in, which you can see, obviously, his reaction to that would be, I'll probably do the same. In terms of players that played an absolute blind, I genuinely think Jacob Murphy was absolutely outstanding. He was trying things that I've never seen him do, like not even just out wide. He came in the middle for spells of the game, and he was drawing 2-3 players around him. I thought he had a fantastic game. Similar with Longstaff. Again, saying with Scott, there was a couple of moments where I feel in general Longstaff hangs on to it just that little bit too much, or he needs an extra touch or two, and there was elements of that. But for the most part, I thought him and Jacob Murphy were probably the two standout players for me today. Like,
yeah, I probably agree. I think Murphy had a great game. He did. He looked busy, and that probably once again that comes down to the amount of possession that Newcastle had and the lack of effort from the opposition, and they weren't really closing anybody down in those anywhere on the field. Arguably, I was going to say midfield, but it was anywhere in the field, and it gave Murphy that chance and possibility, an opportunity to do anything that he wanted in that final third. Of course, it did. Scott saw St. Maxim get a full 90 minutes under his belt as well. I thought Saint looked lively at times. We saw the old Saint at times. We saw the new Saint at times. I think he's probably at the point now where he's trying to find a role within this team.
Absolutely. I think, he was tracking back. He was making good decisions. He was linking up well with Chris Wood. And we've notoriously on this channel said that doesn't happen too often. And I think even he's alluded to it in some comments he's made in French press in the past, where, it was good to see. This was one of those games where you could see St. Maxim try to just take on everyone all the time because he thinks this is an easier opposition and I'll try it. He didn't do that. Maybe once or twice he tried to play the ball, but that's fine because the other times he was doing it, he was finding a pass, he was making good movement, he was, linking up well. He also seemed to kind of have a free role. I saw like he was on the left, he was on the right, he was playing in the middle, which is nice to see. And I think that was just Eddie Howe saying to him, look, go out there. You're on the right hand side predominantly, or the left hand side predominantly, but drift around, find your place in this team because you've got a spot to fight for, and at the moment you're losing that fight. So it was good to see. I think it was also good to see him he rode a few challenges and he went down and didn't stay down too much. Obviously, right at the end there was the big injury or the big kind of knock that he took, but he seemed to be okay. I think he swapped shirts with Falcao at the end, which
he did, yeah.
I was really shocked to see him on the bench. I thought he'd retired a long time ago, but there you go. And yeah, I thought he had a decent game. It wasn't world beaten by any stretch of the imagination, but it wasn't a poor performance by St. Maximum, and that's nice to see.
I'm interested to find out the fans' reaction on this one, Iain. So inside St James's Park, obviously the Newcastle United fan base is renowned for being quite split on these sort of players. Was there moments in the game where you thought that the crowd were back insane? Because it is a different sort of audience in these sort of friendly games and cup games that you see in the Premier League matches. So what was the overall thought of Saint?
Yeah, the general sort of general way atmosphere that I picked up was anytime we got the ball, people were urging them forward. Again, I think that there was quite a few times where I feel it was almost like he was trying too hard to beat players and get past too many players, where we've seen sort of towards the end of last season, he got it in his game where he doesn't have to do everything himself. I still think our strength is on the right-hand side. Obviously, when we've got a full strength side, the little triangle of Trippier, Almiron, Bruno works. And I don't find that we've got that balance on the left-hand side. I don't think there's quite the chemistry's there yet. There was a couple of times where people were getting frustrated with him when he was, like you say, trying to do too much. But then similarly, I feel like he was a little bit frustrated with he was off the ball. He was making some really, really good runs. Yeah. And if the player had it, whoever had it, I can't remember specific examples of who could have played it through, but
there's one I would say midway through the second half, Willock has the ball around the centre circle and saying, great run, he's just on the shoulder of the defender. And he waits, then it's just too late by the time Willock makes that decision.
He did that a few times, particularly in the second half, because I was in the East Stand, so I was closest to him. And he was getting themselves in really good positions and people just weren't finding them. So again, like you say, for the most part, people were urging him forward. Like you say, it's a different kind of crowd. It's obviously like families that don't tend to go to the games. I took obviously Joey and then went with my two nephews, my brother, and Saint's like the big star that people like to see as well. So but for the most part, he had, like I say, he had an all right game. Wasn't his best by any means, but definitely he's been a lot more frustrating, shall we say.
Yeah. Kris Wood got his goal, coming for a penalty. Looked like a penalty. I know we don't have the option of facility for replays when these games are streamed, which is very frustrating, but we can't be too demanding. We'll get one camera in St James's Park there. But Kris Wood overall, it's one of those games really. Top of my head, I can't think of any of that chance that Kris Wood had.
No, I don't think he had many chances as such, but he had some really good link-up play in the middle of the pitch. He would come deep. He'd almost like what we saw Harry Kane against for England. He'd come deep. He'd get that ball. He'd win it, but not only would he win it, he would actually play a player in. So, he'd be flicking it around the corner and Trippier be running onto it, or someone else be coming on. So I think, yes, as a striker, yes, it's a poor performance because you want to get goals, and he did get a goal, was a penalty. So, you kind of knock it down a little bit for that. But as an overall play and as a team play, it's a very good team performance for Kris Wood. And
very similar to what we saw in that run of spell with the 9 games from Kris Wood.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a type of player he is that I think, we didn't give him much service in the box. There were, you didn't see crosses flying in. You didn't see anything really. A lot of the balls that were going in from the wide were going across the ground, or were playing them across, the 12-yard box. So there wasn't much for him to feed off. But he took his penalty very, very well. Top bins, you can't ask for any more. I mean, he's a solid penalty take, and it's nice to have that kind of fallback when, Callum Wilson's maybe he's not fit or isn't playing. And, if you've got him on and you get a penalty, you're pretty much guaranteed a goal. So it's nice to see.
Which you brought up there, Eddie Howe, after the match in his conference, has mentioned he doesn't want to give too much away in regards to Callum Wilson. He did highlight the fact that he has not returned injured from World Cup duties. Whether or not he's playing his cards close to his chest leading up to that cup game against Bournemouth, or there is some sort of niggle there with Callum Wilson. At least now we know, Scott, that on the preview which we recorded just a couple of days ago, we were unsure if Wood would be fit. Now we've seen him play at that. At least we've got an option of a striker now going into that cup game.
Yeah, we do. He didn't get the full 90 minutes, but I think that was just to give the youngins maybe a bit of a run out, but also maybe if he has been nursing a back injury, maybe that was just a slight cautionary thing from Eddie Howe to say, okay, we'll take you off. I think it was maybe 75 minutes, something like that, when he got replaced by, was it Stevenson? I think it was the lad who got the goal midweek. So, yeah, I think, at least we've got someone up front, and we're not having to rely on maybe he's playing a false nine or whatever Eddie Howe would have done had we not have had anyone free. I think he was also talking about Isak. I think I read something that we may not see him until Leicester or Leeds. So that's looking like they're taking their time with him. Maybe it was a worse injury than we initially thought, and they're just nurturing him back so that he's not going to get re-injured quickly. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, Eddie Howe's the type of manager that, you see his press conferences and he doesn't give much away at all. You think you've read what he's going to do, and then the lineup comes out and you're like, oh, I thought he was injured, or I thought, so as someone who plays FPL, it's quite a it's a nightmare to read him as well. So, and as a fan as well, it's quite it's not frustrating, but it's nice that he can have those mind games with other managers and kind of, as he said, play his cards close to his chest.
So it's something else which we mentioned on the preview for the cup game against Bournemouth. We mentioned, I know you weren't part of that preview, but we mentioned that you probably won't see Isak until the new year now. It's probably going to be 2023 by the time we see him. It's probably the right choice to make, even if it is borderline.
I'd say so. It is disappointing that he started. Obviously, it's not his fault. He's been injured, and you don't want, like Scott says, you want to ease him back in. You don't want to rush him back and it be a recurring injury. And he's still a very, very young lad. So he's still got a whole career ahead of him. I think he's played two and a half games, and he has did look very dangerous in the games that he's played. So, like you say, disappointing, probably very disappointing for him personally to be sort of the record signing and then have it cut short, literally not even getting out the starting blocks. But I'd be more concerned, obviously, if we had the expectation of, right, we'll have to get European football or we'll have to avoid relegation, and he was who we were banking on, I'd be a lot more concerned. But you've got players in your arsenal, obviously, Callum Wilson. Chris Wood, again, just touching on it, very similar to what Scott said. My brother, he judges him from a striker's perspective of, well, he doesn't score goals, but I think he does offer so much. He was really, really key in the link-up play. He was coming, like say, really short. He was playing in Murphy and Trippier. So there was one other chance. I think Murphy played it across the box, and I think he was just maybe a yard slower than he should have been in the second half. But thought he played well, and he can be a threat from set pieces. Obviously, going back to the Tranmere game. But like I say, with Isak, going back to your point, I've just completely went off on a tangent there. With Isak, I'd rather not risk him and potentially ruin his career. We don't, like you say, it's all guesswork from fans' perspectives of how bad it is, and I'm sure the medical staff, the coaching staff, have a lot more of a grasp on it than the general fan. So, like you say, it's one of those things. Bit disappointing, but he's still got plenty time forward.
And I think it's great the position that we're in at the moment, just in case people have forgot, third in the Premier League, is that when we're not, like you said, we're not relying on him at this moment in time. We can take our time with him because we're so comfortable in that league position and not fighting any sort of possible relegation. Thank God. It feels good just to say that.
What's nice as well is we're not relying on our strikers for goals.
Yeah,
we've got like Miggy Almiron, we've got Bruno, we've got, Joe Linton's even thrown in a couple of goals. So, if there were no goals coming in, then you'd maybe be panicking. But and we're not scoring 1 or 2 a game. We're scoring like 4 or 5 a game. Like it's not like we need these strikers to put the ball in the back of the net because we've got goals from elsewhere, which is really nice to say as a Newcastle fan because we've been starved of that for so many seasons.
One moment where I did feel my heart skip a little bit is when Trippier goes down, Scott. And he goes down for a little bit, and he didn't look very comfortable.
No.
The physios came on, the team medical staff came on as well, but Trippier, you trust Trippier in saying he's fine to continue. Eddie Howe, once again, wasn't giving too much away. Just said Trippier continued playing, so it looks okay with him. Then also said St. Maximum looked like he was limping off the field. let's be honest, St. Maximin limps off every single game that he plays. So I'm not even concerned about Alan St. Maximin either. But fingers crossed, every single player there has got through that without injury.
Yeah, and that's that's one of the biggest things you need to take away from these games. It doesn't matter about the result. It doesn't really matter about the performance because it's not competitive. But if you can finish that game with all 11 or 15 players, if you're counting subs, coming off that field fit, then that's all you need. Like that's all you can ask for. Yeah, it was a bit squeaky bum time when he went down because he was off the ball. He seemed to turn, and then you saw him just like drop, grab his leg, and you were like, oh no, here we're gone. He's picked up an injury. Physio came on, looked to be his groin. They were saying on the commentary. He got up. He was running a bit gingerly for maybe 5 minutes, but then he was soon bombing up and down the wing again. So I think it was probably just one of those things where it's cold muscles. He's made a little turn that he shouldn't. It's had a little pull. He didn't want to risk it. He's went down just to get someone to look at it, and then he's realised it's just a little niggle that he can shake off, and he did.
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about that. With St. Maximin, it seemed like a heavy fall towards the end of that game. It seemed like a big drop that he took, which is what kept him down. The commentators mentioned, his legs are bandages up, but they also said he's always got them bandaged up. Yeah. So I don't think there's anything to read into that either.
You've mentioned it, Scott. John Anderson has came under some criticism for his commentary. Jesus Christ. There was at times he was laughing at the opposition. He was constantly slagging them off through like him. Now, I love John Anderson. He's a great bloke. He really is, especially when you meet him face to face. But he was negative throughout that one. Like, it was as if it was like your first week back at work after Christmas. That's what he sounded like. He just didn't want to be there either.
He kept saying, they've given the ball away again. They've given the ball away again. That was a foul throw. That was a foul throw. And then it was like, has that striker touched the ball once? And it's just like, come on. Like, I know it's Radio Newcastle, but I think there was a tweet I saw. Someone has retweeted one of the Spanish fans going, we had the same commentary. Who is this? Like, what's this guy on? It's kind of like, so they've all had him as well. So, yeah, it's, maybe he's seen it as like, it's just a preseason friendly. I don't need to maybe put me professional head on. But, yeah, it was interesting. It was good. It was a good laugh. Not that I could hear it, by the way. The sound on that live stream was terrible.
Half time? At half time?
Half time, we had the PA system now done, I think, in the stadium. My poor dog nearly had a little heart attack when that Christmas song came on.
There's a Christmas song that came when I was watching it. Then they were still talking. Then all of a sudden, just boom, music.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa! You're telling me he fell off the wall at one point.
Yeah. So they need to sort that out for the next live stream that they do. But apart from that, it was all good.
End of the day, though, it's 2 goals for Newcastle. Yes, we scored an own goal. But I mean, touch on that because Target can't really do anything about that. He's got to try and do something. Unfortunately, end up in the back of the net. But yeah, it's minutes in these players. 90 minutes for St. Maximin, which would be interesting and waiting for that to happen as well. But yeah, that's it from us now. If anybody watching this, you just want to like the video, it helps us out massively as well. Helps us show up on Newcastle United searches as well. On YouTube, helps us out massively. If you want to subscribe, can do that. Costs you absolutely nothing to do that. If you want to go that step further, you can become a member of the channel as well. It's just $2.99 a month. It helps us out massively with the upkeep and bringing new ideas to the channel as well. Like I mentioned a couple of times throughout this one, there is a match preview for that game on Tuesday against Bournemouth. But we will be back with more match reactions throughout the season, and it's just good to be back, boys. It really is good to be back and talking about Newcastle United.
It is.
Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you next time. Ta-ra.
Bye, everyone.